our community of leaders. Today we have our very own and fantastic Amanda Downs. She is passionate about our vision. You can see it there on the slide, which is actually creating the finest commercial leaders in the world. In true Uspire style, she will provoke our thinking and energize us into transforming our behavior today. Uspire is all about sort of helping leaders to transform their results. So if you just go on to the next slide, Mark, there is a diagram that sort of shows what we try to improve with the people who join part of our community. Successful leaders seek support to develop and to grow. We encourage our own team at Uspire to actually bring the outside in. Yeah, that helps us to find new and exciting stimulus, and you're going to experience some of that today. We try to focus on two things in our network, which is improving a leader's awareness and also their effectiveness. So importantly, it's their awareness of themselves, the awareness of their team, their personal effectiveness, and their team's effectiveness. When we think about today's topic, some people thought that virtual working would cause the world to fall apart. Instead, like Darwin's theory, we have evolved, albeit some better than others. As a leader, managing teams virtually is still evolving for all of us. And people need a greater degree of empathetic leadership, because it is also much harder to delineate working time from personal time. And I'm sure that's actually been a challenge for a lot of people. You're finding yourselves actually working much longer days. You never seem to be switched off. And obviously that's a challenge really, where leaders need to help to support people within this new hybrid working environment. Sometimes we can also feel isolated, and this presents new mental health challenges for organizations. A recent survey suggested that 41% of workers during this latest lockdown, which I think most people have found much more challenging, were suffering from some form of mental health issue. Interestingly, but not surprising, women were 1.5 times more likely to talk about it than men. This clearly suggests that the figure of 41% is dramatically undercalling it. McKinsey also, in another survey, estimated that around $1 trillion of lost productivity globally is caused by poor mental health issues. And the great business author Ken Blanchard stated that leaders need to be empathetic coaches in a world that is changing rapidly. And it is to everyone's advantage to learn how to adapt and then enjoy something better. So Amanda, over to you. Looking forward to hearing you take us through how to work in a hybrid environment.
Thank you, Colin, and welcome everybody. Hello. Some faces that we know, some new friends and some old friends. So welcome everybody. I'm going to, Mark, can you I think I'm just going to see if I can spotlight my screen for everybody. And can I also ask you to all go on mute at the moment, if that's okay? Did that work? Thumbs up. That worked. Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you. And we did have an introductory question, which for those of you who came on a bit later, the introductory question was yes or no in the chat whether you've had your vaccine or not, and we'll reveal that score later. So, definition of remote. Very little connection or relationship with people. Let's move people over here. It's better. Definition of team. A group of people working together to achieve a goal. You know, that's not going to be easy. As Colin said earlier, it is actually one of our 21st, has now become one of our 21st century challenges. I was working with a finance director on Monday, and he has a team of 8, and they've all got, including him, I've all got families who were at home, and then their families, luckily their families have now gone back to, the children have now gone back to school, so it's a slightly different situation. And we were talking about team management, and we were talking about how to keep his teams connected as part of a bigger program that we're doing with overall with this business. And for this team, this guy has got a real block on remote working. And it's not the block that you'd think that he doesn't like it. He actually really likes it. He's got quite a blue style energy. He's quite an introverted thinker. The block that he'd got is on how to actually have authentic team meetings with his team right now. He was ducking one-to-ones, and we talked about what that means. If you duck a one-to-one as a leader, you know, it says, well, there's something more important than you. Sorry about that. And he actually wasn't putting any team meetings in. And when push came to shove, it turned out that he actually hadn't had any team meetings since lockdown, which was a full year. Now, he knew that he needed to do something about that urgently. And we spent a fair amount of time talking about how to facilitate him to authentically have those meetings, to be himself, and also to get help from his team. And it was really interesting because I had to keep asking him, what's stopping you? What's stopping you? And he was just awkward about it. And then he was the leader of the team. And it wasn't priority for him. So we worked on that. And I'm pleased to say that next week he's having his first team meeting. I'm going to pop in to facilitate the beginning and then pop out and leave him to it. So it is down to you. I've put a couple of, you can see I put a couple of posters up behind me, and the green one, it's down to you as the leader to make sure that we move towards the best situation for you and your team, however, whichever industry and whichever sector you're in, to make sure you've got this hybrid team. And I've used the word hybrid on purpose. I'm a big gardener, for those of you who know me. And actually hybrid sounds a bit, remote's horrible, isn't it? The word remote's horrible. Virtual, well, it's not virtual, it actually is one. And virtual suggests that a team's not going to be very good if it's just virtual. So hybrids, yeah, no, and another interesting word that started to band around, next normal, hybrid team. Hybrid in gardening is better than the original. A hybrid daffodil has actually been bred to be better for the consumer, for the person looking at the flower. So actually think of hybrid as better than the original, not monster. So let's get going. Let's get going. One of the things that I'd like you to bear in mind all the way through today, and we use our bowl of fruit analogy, Mark, my colleague sometimes uses this. If you imagine you're the bowl, and you imagine that your team are the fruit, and you can see that they're all different colors and shapes and sizes. We know that what happens with a bowl of fruit as you go through the week is it changes. So you can see in here that there's a large orange, which sometimes might be a bit smaller. We all know what happens to the yellow banana after a few days. And we all know, there goes an orange. We all know that sometimes when we're leading, there are team members that kind of hide at the back. And sometimes the ones right down here, as Colin said, might not be feeling that good. So we need absolutely to make sure that we keep them all afloat and all fresh. One of the things that we've learned over the years, and I've certainly learned over the years, as I've moved from being a sales director, commercial director in the food industry to this role here, where we're focusing on the finest commercial leaders in the world, is that there are many, many things that impact teams and us as a leader. I really love this triangle because it describes that actually we've all got really, really already ingrained personality style that comes from our background and comes from nurture, and we use color styles for that. So those of you who know us will know that we use insights, and we use see me as well. And if you haven't done one, do get in touch in your coaching meeting. Do get in touch because we're going to offer you a coaching meeting later on. Do get in touch to do one. We've then got some situations happening, home and work. Lots and lots and lots of situations, good and bad. People have got married, but people have had babies. Family members, unfortunately, are no longer with us. Things have happened to us. People have moved houses. I've just moved house. Nobody's been yet. So all those situations that impact our behavior at work. And then finally, we've got motivation, and motivation changes over time. So how are you going to manage your team's motivation is really important. So let me ask you a question, and I'd like you to answer it in the chat, please. And it's 2 numbers. what percentage, so if we went 50-50, 60-40, 70-20, 70-30, whatever it is, what percentage of time do you believe you are going to be spending in the next year, home versus office? So home first, let's say 60-40, whatever you decide it's going to be, 0, 100. What percentage of time are you going to spend home versus office? And Mark, I can't see the chat at the moment, so would you mind just shouting some out for me as they come up? This is about you personally, and that might be impacted by what you're going to do with the team.
Right old mixture, actually, Amanda. 100%, 80-20, home is first, 30-70. Lawrence was saying 30-70, 60 home, 40, 80-20, 60-40. The majority is home, is dominant. 90-10, says Joe. David is 60-40.
Thank you.
50-50, Marco's saying. 50-50, Marco from Austria is saying.
Yeah, hi, Marco. Brilliant. So what we're saying here is that we know that we're going to end up with that hybrid. We know we're going to end up with that hybrid. So next question. In a recent survey by Forbes, what percentage of workers say they want to return to full-time office? Full-time office. What percentage of workers?
Ten, 20, 17, 12, 20.
Okay, so the answer is 12% of workers say they want to work full-time back at the office. 12%.
Ben got that spot on.
Really good man, Ben. So why is that? People say they're happier. They say they've got, obviously we've got reduced travel time. Certainly we have in terms of what we do. And we'll talk about our vision at Uspire of the future in terms of hybrid working later. Increased productivity. With that comes the, can I switch off or not? How do I switch off? How do I keep my home and work separate? Time with family is really important, particularly for men and women with families. Actually, there has been more time spent with families. I've been able to, when they could go, I've been able to take my children to school. I hardly ever was able to do that in my previous existence. And there's definitely, though, a need to stay connected. So we've got a bit of a dilemma going on, haven't we? Bit of a dilemma. Our definition of leadership at Uspire is really, really simple. And as leaders, our job is to take people to a better place. So today is all about helping you to just start to think and start the conversation about how to take people to a better place. And I'm going to ask you, as trainers and facilitators, one of the really important things, or one of the things that we find works the absolute best in terms of retention, is if you're able to pass things on to others. So I'm going to challenge you. What one thing from today can you pass on to your team, preferably this afternoon? Preferably this afternoon. So have a think about that and make a note, and we're going to ask you what your one key thing was. Right, so just bear with me a second. I'm just gonna tell you about Ian. Let's tell you about Ian. Can you see Ian? This is Ian. Who do you think Ian is? Guess who Ian is in the chat. Who do you think he is? Well, I'll tell you, Ian is my husband. And last night, we both went to get our vaccines at the Waitrose Sports and Social Club in Bracknell. And I have to tell you, it was so brilliant, so slick, so wonderful, full of loads and loads of volunteers. And I actually welled up. And I welled up for a number of reasons. I welled up because of all those volunteers that came. I welled up because we were going at last. And I also kind of welled up because I've got a guy who's going to join us in a minute as a guest contributor. And this guy was joined our network. He's one of our network members. And he joined our network last year. And then in January, late 2021, he said, I might be a bit busy. And the reason he's going to be a bit busy because he had been made a special advisor to the NHS, and he has been instrumental in making these vaccination centres, this one here at Waitrose in Bracknell, and all over the South. He's been instrumental in making them happen. And he also has been leading a large number of remote teams. So Simon Brown, who was latterly, until late last year, Colonel Simon Brown, and is still Simon Brown OBE, we're going to give Simon 10 minutes and 10 minutes of our time today to bring from an unrelated world, completely unrelated world, to describe and help us to see whether there are any learnings from the work that the NHS have been doing in terms of vaccination. So I'm going to stop. If you could stop, I'll stop spotlighting myself and ask Mark, could you spotlight Simon for me?
Yes, let me try and do that.
Welcome, Simon.
Thank you, Amanda. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Brilliant. Firstly, thank you, Amanda, for asking me to share my experience with you of working as part of a virtual team. Now, I'm extremely conscious this is hardly a unique experience at the moment, is it? So why are you going to listen to me? Well, as Amanda said, it's actually since last October, I've been working as part of the NHS Southeast COVID vaccination programme team, which was actually a team which was formed, stormed, normed, and performed almost entirely in the virtual domain. But again, so far, so what? Well, recently I was asked by the programme leader to conduct an internal review of the programme as part of an approach to continuous improvement, which the NHS is actually really excellent at. It's a huge ask really on a programme of this scale. So to manage it, I fell back on my main area of experience, which, as Amanda alluded to, is not the health service, but is the military. And I used a part of a process that we used to call in the military is mission exploitation, which is used to capture learning during military operations. And in this case, it involved asking a lot of people at every level in the program, from very senior leaders right down to people running individual vaccination sites like the one in the picture, 4 simple questions, which is, give me at least one example of something that has worked really well, no more than 3 things which have gone badly, at least one example of something you feel we need to preserve going forward, and no more than 3 examples of things we need to stop doing or change. Positive observations are not limited, whilst negative ones are. Now, you do that because if you don't, you can run the risk of starting a whinge fest. And rather than getting to understand what people really think has gone wrong, they just unload all the stuff that's wound them up. Now, I've always liked this approach because it doesn't confine people to the subjects they can raise. It allows them to set the agenda. And what normally happens is the same subjects keep cropping up time and time again, which develops patterns which really help with your analysis, as was the case in this review. Now, I expected lots of comments about logistics, policy, organization, and strategy. And of course, I got those, but by some margin, the area most commonly raised was concerns around virtual working. And the vast majority of those comments, I have to say, were not positive. But before you worry this is going to be just another cautionary tale, a story against virtual working, I need to put it in context. Because our team was formed virtually by taking people away from their day jobs to fill roles in the programme, which meant that a lot of people had never met before, they were geographically very dispersed and had no collective culture beyond being NHS employees. And the team had to form at real pace and under huge pressure. Now, we were given just 6 weeks to set up our part of the vaccination programme, which we achieved. And in 15 weeks of operation, and I checked this morning, we've now nearly delivered nearly 4 million vaccinations in 15 weeks, all of which was achieved through remote working. So I'm not here to say it doesn't work. It doesn't actually seem to have stopped this success, but many of my colleagues might be of the view that it's happened in spite of it. So let me give you a bit of a flavour of what they said, and I'm sure you've heard a lot of this before. Now, of course, comments about virtual working were very, very personal. For some people, it works really, really well. but usually for those who have access to a nice work environment and have supportive and stable domestic situations. But for a lot of people, though, that isn't the case. However, to understand why and make allowance for it is a hugely complex issue, because to do that, you have to understand the unique personal circumstances of dozens of people. But if I was to sum it up, it would appear that when it comes to remote working, in our team at least, one size definitely fits nobody. On top of this, the overarching narrative which will emerge would sound something like this. When you move on to a virtual platform or a digital platform like Teams, the video meeting immediately becomes your default activity. And because they are way too easy to arrange, in a flash, everybody's schedule is crammed with meetings. Now, as nobody seems to be overall coordinating this, any gaps are soon filled, and before you know it, every day is back to back. Then, unfortunately, it turns out that a lot of people aren't actually very good at running virtual meetings. So the meetings lack structure, they take too long to actually get going, they produce no actions or discernible output, and they invariably overrun. So by the time you sense this meeting is beginning to add value, you have to drop off to join the next one, where the process is just repeated again, leaving people to reflect at the end of the day that they either seem to be leaving every meeting early or arriving at every one late. Now, you sit back at the end of the day feeling mentally drained, and then the depressing fact dawns on you that none of the day's meetings had actually been very effective. And hang on, it also occurs to you that people leaving meetings early or arriving late is not only inefficient, it's actually quite rude. All of which you realize is completely unnecessary, as the meetings were repetitive, many covering the same subjects, and you could easily have missed half of them. Now, I've simplified a lot of observations there. I'm not trying to make light of things, because a lot of people spoke of this as a vicious circle. Too much poorly coordinated and badly executed activity led some very concerning issues into people's minds. Now, people expected to work really hard on a program like this, and they have. But many felt that virtual working was the direct cause of unnecessarily long hours. People used words like brutal to describe their schedules. An outrageous abuse of time was a phrase given to me by a very senior manager. With work being so relentless, many felt unable to step away from the task in hand, summed up now by the familiar conundrum is, do I work at home or do I live at work? But for some people, the problems went even further. As they said, the sheer number of meetings had a negative impact on even the most basic aspects of their normal life. Eating lunch, even going to the toilet were examples given. Seemingly minor points, but over a protracted period, people said this clearly affected both their physical and mental well-being. Mentally, people particularly struggled with their ability to maintain personal relationships with colleagues, the scope for misinterpreting body language on a screen, getting annoyed when somebody leaves your meeting early, misjudging the tone of something that someone says in a meeting. This led to some very serious and damaging bust-ups, particularly at the start. This was an area where people felt virtual working really magnified a problem, because the perception was it denied them the usual pressure release points you can rely on when working face-to-face, such as going and having a quiet one-to-one chat, going for a coffee, even a drink after work. Now, in addition, some described their experience of virtual working as soulless, leading many to reflect why they actually work in the first place, because for many, it's as much about social interaction as it is about earning money. Now, many found it far more stressful than normal working, and where this stress was generated was in some really interesting areas. For example, people said work became stovepiped, and it was really, really depressing to find out that work you'd been tasked to do and you'd busted your buns to get done had already been done by someone else in another part of the organization. Being repeatedly asked to do the same work by different people. Being unable to solve problems and not knowing who to ask for help or how to find them. A lot of people described the pressure caused by what they didn't know. Work being demanded against wholly unrealistic timescales, but the stress not coming from this being seen as unreasonable, but because people wanted to do a good job, particularly in undertaking of such importance, and they felt they simply couldn't deliver the quality of work they would wish to be associated with under these circumstances. However, they did the work anyway, and then they suddenly realized they didn't get any feedback or didn't even see the information they provided ever being used. So they thought, what's the point? And finally, in one area and one comment I found quite dark, in many ways was that some people felt compelled to attend certain meetings simply to be seen, to prove they were actually at work, even though they knew it was going to be of no benefit to them and the time could have been used far more productively. That said, if you want a headline about stress, the number one cause of stress was having days completely taken over by meeting after meeting, leaving people with no time to think or do during their normal working hours, which pushed a lot of activity outside the normal working day, meaning that every single one of them had a late finish. And a late finish, I mean by sometime after 10 o'clock at night. Also, it caused working at weekends to become the default. So that just gives you a bit of a flavour of the feedback I received. But before I finish, I should make a couple of final points as they provide something of a conclusion. First, of course, not all the feedback was negative. For example, the way virtual working allows you to rapidly bring people together, to focus on an issue, particularly in this case, to get the right expertise together far quicker than you could ever achieve in the real world to head off a crisis. That saved our bacon on more than a few occasions. Amanda's already mentioned it, getting the time back that you otherwise waste traveling. And one that I was personally involved in was the way that the development protocols around virtual visits allowed the team to rapidly inspect and assure vaccination sites, often doing 3 or 4, many hundreds of miles apart in a single day, using only a team of 5 people. That was a game changer. The second point is a lot of what has already been done. A lot is already being done to address many of the issues before I even started this report. And that work has continued with renewed vigor since I completed it. Meeting hygiene has become a buzz phrase again. And someone has actually been put in charge of coordinating meetings at our program level. And they're tasked with slashing the numbers of them and carving out time for people to think and do. Battle rhythms, you can take a man out of the army, have been strictly formalized, but not because not all meetings are bad. For example, proper check-ins were introduced to preview our activity at the start of each day. What are we doing? Why are we doing it? And at the end as well, what have we done and have we achieved what we set out to? All with the aim of making the thing work for us, not against us. The same approach has been adopted to reports and returns. Keep doing those which are necessary, can those which aren't. Sharing best practice about how to run virtual meetings and mentoring people to improve if they're not very good at it. Learning that even simple things like having a formal agenda and actually sticking to it can make a huge difference. And finally, and the area where I've been most forceful about the need for improvement is to remember one thing, is that thing on the other screen is actually a human being. In the virtual world, I believe leaders still need to lead, perhaps even more so. People need to be supported and nurtured, definitely more so. Understand people's circumstances. If your colleague works from a small shared flat where they get to use the table only every other day, then only expect them to check in every other day. Make sure you carve some time out at the start or end of meetings and the day to check in with people. Share a joke. In this case, share good news and anything which reinforces people's connection to the team and to the output and reminds them what their contribution is making possible. If I can sum up our approach now, it's to remember to value the human over the technology, an approach which is neatly captured in our now unofficial virtual working mantra, which is remember to be kind. That's all I've got to say. I don't know how you want to take this now, Amanda.
Let me just unmute. Thank you, Simon. You know, when I spoke to Simon last week, the other thing that that really resonated with me is the importance of the job that those remote teams are doing and the level of stress that those teams must have had on them to get this done, get these vaccinations done. Mark's done a quick recce of how many people on here have had vaccinations, and it's 28% of people here have already had their vaccines, which is, you know, so is that about right, for the population? Yeah. Brilliant, thank you.
We did 60,000 yesterday alone.
Yeah. So my husband and I were 2 of those last night. So so there's you've got the topic and what you're trying to achieve as a team, and then you've got the way that you're doing it with this remote way. And I know somebody in the chat, Simon, has asked what those questions were right at the beginning. You know, 3 things you've done well before you ask what you didn't like, and so on. So we're going to do an exercise on that in a moment in some breakouts, and I'll allow you to say hello to some people. There's a couple of questions as we go along. We're going to collect questions for you to reflect on later. And a couple of questions that have come up for me are, number one, how are you? Let's start again. Whose role is it to make sure that you're role modeling meetings etiquette? It's a bit of a rhetorical question, isn't it? When I ask that question of the leaders that I speak to, often they go, well, we're all right, but it's somebody else. Whose role is it to make sure that the business changes or the organization changes? And, you know, it's ours. I'm going to provoke you to say, kind of, it's down to you, down to you. And the second one, which is really, really important, and you mentioned it, Simon, is people don't know where to go, especially new starters. So how are you inducting your new starters into the business so that they do know where to go for those simple little questions that might make them feel a bit daft? So how are you inducting people in? Buddy system, regular check-ins, whatever it might be, and stay on board on Teams, whatever it might be, to make sure they don't feel daft when they're a new starter and they don't know where the spreadsheet for the expenses is or whatever that might be. Right then, so Mark is going to organise us in a moment to go into smaller groups, and I've got a question for you. I know, Simon, I don't know whether you actually said it in your speech. I didn't hear it just then. You mentioned that the 4 questions you call it, was it mission exploitation?
Mission exploitation, yeah.
Brilliant, a brilliant Army term. I've actually called it mission review. And we're not going to do all 4 questions. I'm going to put you into smaller groups, and we're going to ask you to answer these questions. Share what's worked and what has not for you in the last year with this situation, working from home. Maybe just one thing each. Share what's worked and what has not worked. So you know what you're going to keep and what you're going to kick out. Okay. Okay, Mark, thank you. We're going to go 10 minutes. And then I'm going to ask you to share in the chat what your key things are that has worked and what hasn't worked. So Mark, are you ready? You're on mute.
Back off mute.
Fabulous. Back on mute.
So there we go. So just to be clear, can we come back at 15:15? So I'm conscious that the setup with this hasn't shown me the time, Amanda. So it might be that we just have to self.
Oh, okay. Give me a sec. I can do that.
Can you do that? Yeah. So.
Oh no, sorry, no, I can't. No, you've taken control. That's fine. So we will stop this at 15:15.
And then come
okay.
back to the main meeting.
Please, before we go on, before you press the button, Mark, as a community of leaders, and we've got some new leaders here who we've never met before, please do feel free to share your email addresses, to say who you are, and to start to connect as a community, because it absolutely is our intention here that we increase the number of leaders who are talking. So please do feel free to do that as we go through and later on. Okay, see you in a bit.
Hello again.
Wonderful. Well, hopefully you met some new friends in your breakouts. Fantastic. And do feel free to keep in touch. Let's just make sure, let's just wait. We've just got a couple more seconds, because I think we gave 60 seconds. Here they all are. Hi, everybody.
Yeah, you got 15 seconds, Amanda.
Yeah, so some people may still be using up their 15 seconds in their breakout. Hopefully, as I was saying earlier, that you've met some new friends, at least new leader friends. Okay, hi everybody.
Oh, hi.
Hi everybody, all back, wonderful. Okay, so in the chat, it's really important this, if you could share for us, what one thing you're going to stop doing after last year's experience going forward when we go hybrid, and what one thing are you going to keep doing? And we're going to, in the chat, we're going to collect those and we're going to send them back as a list of do's and don'ts for you, as well as a number of questions that are being raised in the chat, and our advice in terms of things to think about as a leader with your team, so that we've got a really rich handout to send out to you. So it's really important, and we'll collect all of those. So please do, as you go through, add those questions in and those thoughts. Right, fabulous. Now I should be able to see the chat here. Yes, stop filling the diary, stop over-reliance on functional tasks. That's a really important one. One of the things that we talk about in the network with our members is we're constantly talking about how much time you're spending on task and how much time you're spending on team. How much time is it all about doing rather than being with the team? And this isn't just a last year question for you. It's actually a always question, and that is how much are you doing your functional role, and how much are you getting results through other people doing the functional role? If you're in that kind of a role, if you lead a business yourself, how much do you end up doing yourself versus how much do you make sure that you get through people? Because the leader's job is to get the results through people rather than do it yourself. Doesn't mean you never can do anything, but how much time? What else have we got there, Mark? Please shout out.
Yeah, Lisa,
meetings.
a great one, saying don't think that a packed diary is about added value, because it isn't. Yeah, absolutely. Stop expecting people to travel to meetings and create, Lawrence, thank you, and actually make sure that you create that. Make sure that you create that hybrid. And after the break, we're going to talk about how we go about creating that vision of a new and next normal, whatever the jargon you want to use. But what is the vision for that hybrid? What are you going to do, and how are you going to get it through your business? If there's more than just you as a leader to get it through with, or how are you going to make sure you role model it? Thank you. Just a couple more I'd just like to look at here. Alistair, 100% video calls. Yeah, there are other ways. Olga's had a nice one here, Amanda. Olga has said, stop not having breaks consciously during the day.
Yes, so have them. Yes,
have many more conscious breaks rather than wall boom.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Brilliant. Okay, fantastic ideas and fantastic do's and don'ts there that have come through. So thank you very, very much for that. We are going to take a 10-minute break in a moment. And after that, I might have another little guest contributor for you, assuming that it hasn't lost his Wi-Fi connection. And then we're going to talk about what is your vision of good going to look like going forward, and who do you need to influence, and how do you actually mobilize that in your own business? So what is your vision of hybrid team going to look like, and what is down to you? What is down to you? Okay. Brilliant. Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to be back here, please, at 10:30. 10:30. And yeah, and we will see whether our guest contributor is going to make his little contribution. Okay, see you at 10:30.
Hey, Amanda, Mark, I need to duck out now. I've got a call at 10:30, unfortunately.
No problem, Alistair. Thanks for coming.
Thanks, Alistair. Great to see you.
I'll send you the recording.
Likewise. Look forward to seeing the recording.
Bye.
Bye.
Great.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you. So Amanda just had some feedback from a nurse of ours that's working in the major vaccination center. And she said the team from the military arrived last week, so they got extra support. And she said it had taken her about 2 days to train every nurse. It took the military team 30 minutes to be trained up on all the systems and the protocols and get started. She said it was totally incredible.
Amazing.
Can-do attitude, open-mindedness, positivity.
Fantastic. But yeah, fantastic, Simon.
I'm very biased, obviously.
Yes, I know.
The vaccine QRFs, as they're known, each region has 6, and we have 6, led by a military doctor, GP, and about 12 people, normally quite low rank, lance corporals, corporates, privates. You can actually plot where they've been by looking at the productivity of sites. You don't know where they are, go and look and see which one's spiked. And it will invariably be that. And do you know why? It's not just because the military go in and monster it. It's because it's the energy they bring. Everybody is so pleased to see them. They see it as, we're being helped. It inspires everybody else to do better. It's really amazing. And in fact, because of that, we're forming, it's a rubbish name. It's called the Peripatetic Vaccination Team. The Peri Team, as it's now being called, which sounds like something from Nando's. And they are forming a civilian equivalent to go round, because one thing about it is it's actually quite draining. It's a pretty dull task, and we're really worried about people making mistakes. If you sit there drawing up vaccines all day, you might get it wrong. So actually having that relief to kind of pep people up. But no, it's great to hear that, Mark.
Yeah, it's lovely feedback, because Joanne is a very experienced nurse. She's been there since the start of it's the mega centre at Epsom Racecourse. And she said the energy change in all of us is incredible, because we just want to be as good. She said we're all turning up smarter, on time, in full. And it's just this point you make about it's the impact on the whole environment, not just on being efficient and on it. It's just demeanour.
Epsom's run by an ex-army doctor, just saying.
Well, yeah, my experience this morning, so I was vaccinated this morning, was fantastic.
At Epsom?
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Fantastic. Efficient, charming, reassuring. And I did have a military nurse doing the vaccination.
What you said, Amanda, about the volunteers, man of the match. All day long is the volunteers. They are absolutely superb.
Hello, Amanda and Mark and Simon as well. My wife has been working as an ICU nurse at the Royal Surrey in Guildford and doing the 12-hour shifts and everything that's been going on there. And she volunteered to do that as well. She's a physio in a private company, and she basically said, "Yeah, I'll go and do it." So our home life, turned upside down with the shift patterns and everything she's been through. But what came through from it loud and clear was the leadership in that hospital, and how consultants have been pulling their weight as well, and just coming in and volunteering at the end of their full shift, and just being runners and helping the nurses and helping the ICUs. And it's been absolutely incredible. She got her Pfizer jab and was thrilled to get that as well. I think she got that at the Royal Surrey too. But yeah, the work at Epsom Racecourse, I've heard a lot about that, being in the Guildford area myself, and seems like it's just going beautifully to plan at this point in time. And it was really inspiring to hear you, Simon, and what you were talking about. So thank you for sharing.
It's a pleasure. You had me really worried, Steve, because I looked at it, I thought, oh Christ, someone from the British Medical Journal's on it.
I know we've been writing a lot of content for sort of Nightingale hospitals, and putting a lot of information into the NHS through our best practice database. And it's been really interesting to hear from your point of view what you were saying, and learnt a lot from that. So really interesting. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it was because when Amanda and I hadn't really compared notes, but when Amanda held up that triangle, I looked at that and I thought, in our case, it's the people's motivation has beaten their situation. The motivation is one thing that we just haven't had to struggle to do, is that people wanted to be part of this.
Yeah,
that's the one.
Yeah,
That invariably, the people who work in the NHS are, of a certain personality. They're very loyal. Again, motivation to get this done has just been.
And there was such a long period of time where people felt so helpless last year that your kind of ability to do something and shape your life was taken away from you instantly in March. And then this is a chance for people to go, I can do something, I can actually give back and help. And to do it with military support as well, just gives that framework and that structure, which is brilliant.
I think you're spot on. As you say, it's about people taking back control, isn't it?
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing your story, Steve, as well, about your wife. Brilliant.
I know. I'm absolutely remarkable that she was able to pull that off from being a physio. No training, straight into 12-hour shifts. Nothing at all. So yeah, people are really stepping up.
Got a lovely story from this morning, because the nurse that did my vaccination, called Sarah, and she said she's got a 4-year-old son, and he's telling all of his friends that my mum fights COVID with a big sword.
Fantastic.
Every day she goes out with this sword and fights COVID for us. So
there is a proud little boy. That's fantastic.
You got it.
I'm glad my woman didn't turn up with a big sword, let me tell you.
Well, you always want your parents to be heroes, don't you? And they always are in your eyes, in a happy family. And this time people can really be that. It's fantastic. Yeah.
And Ivan said in the chat, actually, the Newcastle Centre, the Centre for Vaccination, is run by ex-military chap as well, and obviously doing very, very well.
I have mine done at Harlequin's football ground. So my husband, we went a couple of weeks ago, but I had mine done on Sunday. But he's sort of like, yeah, let's take photos on the pitch when we come back out. Isn't it exciting? I'm like, not really. I mean, it's fine. I love rugby, but yeah, I'll just get home. So, but it was incredible in terms of the numbers of people that I think that day they said they only had about 450 going through. It was lower on Sunday, but they were ramping it up, going to be about 900 a day. And you just think, wow, amazing in terms of that. And everybody was so lovely. They're incredible, really lovely.
A source of huge pride, Lisa, isn't it? I mean, that is the emotion I feel most of all, is pride in how we are managing this as a nation.
Yeah.
I'm from Ireland, and I just absolutely love hearing everything you're saying. And I really wish that there was more of these positive stories out in the media rather than the scaremongering. Yes. And it is just lovely, because there is so many families out there that have volunteered. We're not hearing enough of it. And I really appreciate you sharing all these stories, because my brother is living in the north and he's going to get his vaccine the end of next month. And I am so excited, because I'm hoping my parents will have been vaccinated by June. So he'll be able to come visit my parents, because my father has been unwell. But it's just wonderful to hear that the military, that every corner of the country has come together to fight this. It's just wonderful. And I really do appreciate listening to these stories. So thank you.
I mean, I should give a shout out to other people. It's not just the military. In Basingstoke, the fire station has been turned into a vaccination site, and the firemen are giving the vaccines.
It's amazing. Yeah.
It is really a truly everybody thing.
My sound has gone off on this. It's weird.
Simon, it's Jonathan here. I love the fact that when I had my vaccine, someone had done a time and motion study, and I was offered the fast track. If I didn't want to sit down, I could stand up, and the throughput in a stand-up section was much higher. I thought that was a really good innovation.
Yeah, there's been a lot of that. I mean, you're talking about sites now which will get people in and out in less than 7 minutes.
Yeah.
I don't know how you get back in it though.
Where it was about half an hour at the start.
Yes.
It's incredibly slick. Incredible.
It is. Mine was actually, I had my vaccine. So the lady who was giving us the vaccine, we went in together, and she went, Amanda does. I was like, oh, Amanda, hello. It's so Anna's mum, and it was a school mum. And I didn't know she was a nurse even, I didn't even know she was a nurse. And I said to her, you are an actual nurse, aren't you? But to be honest, I would have had anybody would have been fine stuffing that in my arm at that stage. I was so proud. Right then, it is, I believe, 10:30. There's people coming back on board. Wonderful. Please do continue to share stories, and do really seriously. I know it might feel a little bit like self-promotion, but do put who you are and your email address if people, and where you work as we go through this second session, because actually it's really important that you do connect. So please do connect with Simon. Simon is going to be working with Uspire over the next while, and we're aiming actually to be running one of Simon's sessions, which I'm not going to tell you too much about, outdoors in a wood when we're allowed. So watch out for that one and book onto that one. And let me just say, Sarah, and also I can see Maliki, who happens to be just above you in the little thing. Happy St. Patrick's Day, and thank you so much for turning up to this. I know there's not a lot else to do in Ireland at the moment, but thank you. We really appreciate you turning up on a bank holiday. Right then, so our second session today is about what we do. What do we do next in order to make sure that we've got this hybrid team way of working, and that you are at your absolute best as leaders of those teams and leaders in your organizations. So that's what we're going to do next. But just to warm us up, I'm absolutely delighted to say that there is a gentleman that has joined our Discovery Day today, who Uspire worked with when we were actually Star Commercial Academy, probably about 6 or 7 years ago at Brooklands Racecourse. And this gentleman is a comedian. He is an actor, he's an improv star, and he also supports businesses in bringing some humor and bringing some, I think maybe actually bringing some perspective, just the way that Simon's done in terms of unrelated worlds, bring some perspective to where we are now. So I'm absolutely delighted that he's agreed to have 5 minutes giving us his tips for succeeding. I'm going to introduce Neil Malarkey. Mark, would you be so kind as to spotlight Neil?
Yeah, I've unmuted you, Neil. Are you unmuted?
I think I am. Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Everybody wave.
Hello.
So, this is quite unexpected because I've worked with Mark and Amanda, and I thought, well, that's an interesting title. I must drop in. And then little did I know that the gorgeous Simon Brown will be there. I want him to be Prime Minister. Can he not just run everything? Isn't it brilliant? I mean, just what he said about not only the army and its sort of protocols, but also the fact they inspire other people. Isn't it fascinating? But all the stuff you said, Simon, is what I've discovered in the last year. So what happened to me was March the 15th last year, the Comedy Store Players, the improv troupe of which I'm part, we did our last show. And then I said to my wife, I don't think I should go in again. And then lo and behold, the Prime Minister said, don't go to restaurants, don't go to theatres. And I suddenly had to go, oh, what am I going to do? And so I had to learn about all this virtual stuff. And of course, people have been doing it for years in global teams, but I quickly had to get some insights. I did lots of pilots, not least with other people from learning and development. I was hoping to get some advice about things like pedagogic techniques, neuroscience. The best advice somebody said was, why not color code your bookshelves? And of course, it's a great starting point because people say, oh, I like that, they look nice. Or they go, oh, I hate it, everything's out of order. There's a great guy called Mark Bowden. He's the truthplane.com. He's the body language expert. He's even helping Zoom employees with body language in virtual. And he said, his tip was, why not put something in your background that sort of says who you are? But all the things I said that I heard Simon say, all the things I've discovered about too many meetings, no agenda. So I've seen everyone else giving their virtual tips on LinkedIn and so forth. So I decided to do the opposite. And then Amanda said, oh, can you do it as your character, L. Vaughan Spencer, whose motto is don't be needy, be succeeding. And of course, I didn't have time to put the beard on and the ponytail and the suit. But most of his advice is things like, make sure people can see up your nose. Make sure there's a window behind you. Make sure you're in a kitchen or somewhere where there's a lot of reverberation. Make sure you haven't planned anything and just, feel it. So these are all things that I think Simon has told us. And so when I'm being my sensible stuff, which I'm trying to be now, I've got my own little mnemonic, my own little acronym. And I'm going to share it with you now. It's OLE, which is organize, listen, energy. And I don't know if I should, register that, but basically it's all the things Simon said. Organize the agenda, organize the tech. Somebody put in chat, which is your least favorite platform? We're on Zoom now, but who's experienced Teams, WebEx, Blue Jeans, GoTo, anything else? What have I missed? Oh, Skype or FaceTime. You know, which is your favorite, which is your least favorite, which is your big thumbs down? Because I'm trying to get body language, digital body language. Yes, look at that. Matt Spencer getting Zoom fatigue. WebEx, yeah. My son's had to do WebEx at school. Oh, it's always dropping out. But just things like, as we're on Zoom, it's always fun to think about the energy as well. So organize for Ole, organize the, the tech. Are you all familiar with the platform? Have you got your screen? Don't we love it when Amanda had real things rather than slides? Isn't it great to have something 3D? And also, I'm standing up. In April last year, I said, can I stand up? They said, don't see why not. And lots of people are now saying, when you're presenting, try standing up because of the energy you can bring. You can animate the screen. And it feels like a presentation. You can't do it all day. My next one is L for listen. Listen to people. What's being said, what's not being said. Bring people in through the chat. Bring people in, you have to say the name. You can't say, oh, you look interested. You like we could in face-to-face. So poor WebEx. Is there anybody from WebEx going to help us understand why that could be better? But some people don't like Zoom because they're coming in on their browser. They haven't got the app. I work with some government departments. They don't like Zoom. It's evil. There's something about it because there was Zoom bombing, wasn't there, in April? I think it's much safer now. But things like that. Teams is pretty good for sharing documents. I once did an event for Teams for 300 people and we broke it. Chat didn't work. And then you discover, I was saying, put things in chat, nothing's coming in. So they had to email the head of sustainability, who then would phone me and tell me what the suggestion was. But just, so listen to what's not being said, who's not being included. And the last one, energy, and Simon totally nailed this. Energy. You've got to give energy in the meeting, but you've got to make sure you don't take too much energy out of yourself. So I would say, and some firms are saying that they are defaulting their Outlook or iCal to 25 minutes, not an hour. Because as Simon said, so many meetings are kind of repetitions or they kind of run out of vim and vigor. They don't need to be longer than 25 minutes. Some firms are saying we have a topic to deal with, so let's do it in 2 shorter meetings. Right, at some point I should stop, but Ole, that's it really. That's my thing. But remember, we don't want to see up your nose. We don't want to see out the window. Very simple thing. Did anyone see Hillary Clinton in November where she actually she was sitting, but her laptop was on books. So the best thing is to have the camera, which is the green light or the white light, at the same level as your eyes. Because otherwise we will be looking up your nose. Or the other thing, which is you're looking at that screen, but the camera's on that one. It's such a shame, isn't it? But I love it when Amanda said hybrid with those lovely flowers is actually better than the original. So look, I can look at those. Are they daffodils? I can see your faces. You can see mine closer than you would in real life. So how can we use this proximity, this emotional proximity, perhaps, that we can actually be better, and we can have some better meetings. Certainly people are saying we can be more productive if we have real agendas, proper actions, proper follow-throughs, proper sending documents in advance, so we're thinking about it. So any Zoom meeting, we're already kind of starting before we start. But if we do have these virtual meetings, how can we make them better? The big question though is, Zoom, video calls, Google, whatever, we can be productive, perhaps more productive if we really get the organization right. But where does the innovation come from? And that's why I want to be in the wood with Simon. I know that face-to-face, and Goldman Sachs are saying this, it depends which sector you're in, but those chats we have, those bumping into you by the lifts, those moments by the microwave where I'm not sure if I should say this, or my boss sees me coming back a bit sad from a meeting and she wants to say, okay, let's have a chat. Anyway, those are my things. I don't know what's going on here. Amanda's sort of
fantastic. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me, everyone.
Very much. Thank you. Round of applause. Thank you, Neil. And we hope to see you again really, really soon in the flesh and on screen. Absolutely on screen. Right then, okay, everybody, we are going to now move on to our second stage, which is actually what on earth are we going to do next? We've already talked about what we're going to keep and what we're going to dump in terms of our the experience of the last year. So now it's time to think about what are we going to do next. I'm just going to share background, which is another way that you can use if you find that you are sick of looking at PowerPoints. There's another way to do it is to share one of your screens, one of your slides as a JPEG, and this works. This seems to work. This model, which I don't want to ram down your throats as the model of leadership, but this model works for every situation. I'm going to move my head in a minute and take you through it, but actually it works for everything. It works for you when you're thinking about your team and how you want to work in the future. It works for you individually, it works for families, it works for teams, and it works for whole businesses and whole organizations. And it's so simple. It comes from the work of Ali Stewart and Derek Biddle, and it's called from an approach called liberating leadership. And it's visioning, I also go the right way, it's visioning, mobilizing, and then developing and enabling. Visioning, mobilizing, and then developing and enabling. I'm going to focus on visioning and mobilizing, and don't worry about what's written here because I'm going to send you this in a handout afterwards. But we've put some really provocative words here in terms of the types of competencies that we need as leaders to be able to get to develop those high performing teams. So let me just share a slightly different version of this so that we can focus on those two areas. And hopefully this will work as well. Yeah, we've been experimenting with this. It's always best to have a gap where your head goes, a bit like the window, Neil. It's always best to have a gap where your head goes. So there are 4 competencies, 2 for each for visioning and mobilizing. And the key thing around vision is that it's not just for Christmas, it's every day. Every day it's around, is everybody, including yourself, and if you're not, you start with yourself, are you really clear about what you now stand for as a leader in this new next normal, in this hybrid world? And what's your purpose? What are your values? What is your intrinsic brand DNA? What are you like online? What are you like on LinkedIn? Where are people seeing your leadership personality? And then the second one is reinvention, shifting paradigms that are going to prevent growth. So the example of we need 25-minute meetings, Neil, as Neil mentioned, and the examples that Simon gave about what happens when you don't think about your meetings, you have to shift the paradigm there. There is a paradigm. Oh yeah, but we'll just sneak one in at lunchtime. Oh yeah, but this is so important that we have to all be together. Oh yeah, but that one came from head office there in Europe, they're an hour ahead. So et cetera, all those different reasons why not to, you have to be able to shift that paradigm. And then mobilizing. Mobilizing is about being absolutely clear about what's going to happen once you've agreed it as a team, and exactly what the outcomes need to be, and then to trigger initiate. And initiation comes from role modeling. So do it yourself first. Do it yourself first. So vision and mobilize. I'm going to turn this off because you can't see my hands when you do this. So I'm going to turn this one off. It's quite a good little technique, actually, if you've got some simple slides that you just need to make sure you keep connection. We discovered that relatively recently. I'm going to turn that one off. Back to me. Okay, and let's just talk a bit more about visioning. What is your new vision for you, your team, and your customers? A couple of stories. I went to the doctor. This sounds like one of Neil's gags. It's not. I went to the doctor. And I didn't go to the doctor, of course. I rang the doctor's surgery, and they said the doctor would answer the phone, and they did answer the phone, and they called me afterwards. And I ring the doctor, and the doctor talks about what I need, and I actually needed an injection in my arm for a kind of frozen shoulder thing. And he said, I think probably we should give you an injection in your arm. And I said, well, when could I get that? He said, well, can you come in half an hour? And I went, what? He said, well, how can you come in half an hour? And I said, how is this actually impacting your productivity as a doctor in the surgery? And he said to me, Mrs. Downs, I like that they call you Mrs. Downs. He said, Mrs. Downs, I cannot, but it is beggars belief, Mrs. Downs, that we used to put ill people in a waiting room to mix up all the illnesses and then wonder why we weren't very productive. We will never go back to a waiting room ever again. This is our new normal. And we've got a massive vision about how to make our digital approach and our digital service better. And it was the first time I thought, actually, wow, that is such an improvement that they would never have got to. The NHS, and you, Simon, you deal with the NHS, and NHS, we do have the NHS as one of our clients. They would never have got to that in a million years, well, maybe in 10 years they might. So there's an example of a new vision. Another one, and I just, Babette, if you are online, if you could just say so in the chat, that would be brilliant. So Babette Ogden is a regional director for a company called the Cambridge Weight Plan, Cambridge One-to-One Diet, which has been phenomenally successful this year. And again, they are one of our clients. And one of the things that hi Babette, great, I'm going to ask you to pop on in a second. And one of the things that we started at Uspire with Babette was a leadership program. And it was to be three modules, and the modules were to be face-to-face with teams of about 15 people for a whole day, all coming together at head office, etc., etc. And then COVID hit. And I am absolutely delighted to say that I think, Babette will correct me if I'm wrong, that over 1,000 of 7,000 consultants have now actually gone through the first module of this leadership program online. And I can't imagine, Babette, please do come and join us. I can't imagine that you will ever go back to where you were. Babette.
Yeah, thanks, Amanda. No, we definitely wouldn't. And you know, all those meetings we had in various hotels, trying to work out how we were going to do this in a face-to-face situation and having to limit the numbers of people. But online, as you said, we brought the actual timing of the trainings down dramatically from what it was originally, and being able to put, you know, massive numbers of consultants through. But the great thing is we got lots and lots of new people joining all the time, which means that we can just keep running these things over and over and hitting that same audience again, which has been absolutely fantastic for the business.
Fantastic. Thank you, Babette. Thank you for joining. Looking absolutely wonderful up there in Colby. Let's just talk about, I'm just going to just talk you through now. Thank you, Babette. A couple of the things that we've done at Uspire to change our vision and to mobilize ourselves. And then we're going to go into some breakouts again, so you can say hello to some new people again, and just think about what you personally, as a leader in your business or organization, need to do to start to create a new vision. If you've already done it, then share, please do share. And if you're thinking about what you need to do, to spend a little bit of time thinking about how you vision and mobilize your organization to get going into this new hybrid. So let me just share a couple of things for you, Spire. Our vision is still the finest commercial leaders in the world, and it's really serving as well. So there's a couple of things that we've got in our new vision, and hopefully my colleagues, this won't be a surprise to you. We reckon we're going to be, our vision is 70-30, so 70% online, 30% face-to-face trainings, coachings, development facilitations, sales training, and so on. And what that's allowed us to do is to really think hard about how we mobilize, and I'll tell you about that in a second. And the other thing is, our vision is that we are hopefully giving you some ideas about how to be at your best on screen, how to be at your best as a leader remotely and in this hybrid world, by role modeling this sort of thing. One of the reasons why we're running these events is to be able to show you that show you how to do it. I was listening to Neil, our strapline is energize, provoke and transform. So how to do it with energy, because it can be done with some, a few cards and a bit of flip chart and so on. So a couple of tips from me before we go into there. I'm going to give you a couple of tips on mobilizing as well. Make sure that your team is involved in a new vision of success. So have this conversation as a separate meeting, Zoom, whatever it needs to be, and share stories just like we did using Simon's method. Share those stories about what you've absolutely hated and what you absolutely don't want to lose. Do a mission review. And then finally, WOW stands for ways of working. We've talked about teams, we talked about meeting durations. Get it done and stick to it and role model it so that you've got a new vision of how you're going to work. In terms of mobilize, a couple of things that Uspire have done to mobilize to this next normal. First of all, discovery days, as we've said, one of the things that is really clear to us is that we must continue to communicate with leaders virtually. And we are also, all being well, going to be having some face-to-face sessions as well as we're allowed to. But actually, this allows us so much talent to be able to speak to and to be able to role model to, like yourself say, it's brilliant. And the other one is that to mobilize ourselves to be as good as we possibly can, we spent the early summer of last year doing online virtual training to be Institute of Leadership and Management Master Trainers, which was great fun and a massive challenge, actually. Massive challenge to use all these different techniques and video and so on and so forth. You might have seen that we've been practicing with LinkedIn video as well. So to be able to mobilize ourselves to be at our best and be able to show our customers and our clients, sales teams, commercial leaders and leadership teams how to do it better. Ideas about mobilizing. How are you going to induct your teams? How are you going to mobilize new people? Power hours. We've started using power hours for a really important topic, just one topic at once. Power hours. Decide when your office days are going to be and all go in together when we're allowed to. Tool up. What do I mean by that? Well, tool up means get the kit that you need. I've got a whiteboard. I bought myself a flip chart. Now, okay, I'm in that line of work, but what are the things that your team need to tool up? Because if you're not doing it now, get on with it. And then the other one is set some dates so that they're looking forward to something. Let's hope that we are going to be able to be together in the summer or even September. My recommendation to my coaching clients is that they get a date in the diary in September or even earlier if they can. So there's some ideas around mobilizing. So what do you need to do with your teams to vision and mobilize to this hybrid next normal? We're going to go into breakouts. We're going to be in there for 10 minutes. Mark is going to organize us. And I really appreciate when we come out, again, if you put your ideas in the chat so that we can collect them and send them back so that you've got a really rich, we've had over 50 leaders on this call, so we can get a really rich view of ideas about what you need to do to vision and mobilize. All right, so off you go and I'll see you in 10 minutes. I also, real-time issues. One of the things that I need to make sure that I do going forward in the hybrid world is have 2 cables, because just as we went into that breakout, my laptop said it was going to die. So I've moved. It was actually the plug that had gone wrong, so I've moved across the way. My husband's drum kit's behind me. I'm not playing that, but I've just moved across the way and doing a bit of standing up, which is always good. So again, please do make sure that you're sharing email addresses, that you're sharing your connection, and that you're making sure that you grow this community as we go through. So please do that. I keep trying to remind you to do that, because it's really, really important that we are able to connect with the finest leaders in the world, because if we don't know them, then we won't be able to. So what we'd like to do now is share in the chat any key reflections on what you think you need to do next, specifically to create, to support and to take responsibility, because it is down to you, to take responsibility for creating that new hybrid world that we are all going to be working in going forward. What are the things you need to do? And Mark, I'm going to ask you to read them out for me as we go through, because I can't see that far ahead.
Yep, will do. Just put that perspective in, Amanda.
Thank you.
Remember to shout out achievements of the
Yes.
team, however small. So this is Simon's point about emphasize the positive. What one thing are you proud of?
Yeah. Yeah.
Office time needs to be engaging with each person. Spend enough time on the vision, Graham is saying, before we jump into the mobilize.
Absolutely right.
Yeah.
Absolutely right. That now, Graham, you said spend enough time on the visual before jumping into the mobilize. One of the things before COVID that we found is that people were actually jumping into develop and enabling, which are the other two stages. What does that mean? Actually, to put people through, you know, some pretty deep development before they're clear on what the vision and the purpose is. So make sure that you don't do that. And then the other one is enable, because one of the situational leadership approaches for enable is delegate.
Mm-hmm.
Be really, really careful about how you're delegating right now, because if they're new, if they're if the person is new, if the person in the fruit bowl is kind of at the bottom here at the moment, or if they've got something going on, or their situation has changed or their motivation has changed, just be really, really careful that you delegate very, very consciously, shall we say, consciously. What else we got, Mark?
Set office days. So be specific about office days. Agree with the team ways of working.
Yes.
Be much more purposeful.
Yes, yes. And when we say purposeful, who was it that said that?
Good question. It might have been Andrea from Milan.
Andrea, when you say, Andrea, welcome from Milan, welcome Milan. Andrea, when you say purposeful, what specifically do you mean?
I don't know, because it's not been me.
You've got lots of them here, Andrea. So you talk a lot.
If the person is on, then do shout. Purposeful as a leader and planful. Sometimes people call it planful. Remember that Simon was saying about making sure you're really clear about why you're meeting. And that's not to say stick to the agenda and only talk about that, but to be really clear that actually there's a reason for you to be there, not just to show your face and not just so your boss can see that you're working, or not just because you feel you have to, but to make sure that there's a real purpose for you being there, and also for your team to be there, and allow the team members permission not to be there. What else we got, Mark?
So it was Rob Merritt who said purposeful.
Oh, thank you, Rob.
Strip away the uncertainty. Give yourselves the permission not to worry about the things you can't influence.
Yeah. Do that work on circles of influence and stakeholder mapping to make sure that you're clear about what are the really important things that you can control versus things you can't.
Yeah.
For example, the cable going down on your laptop 5 minutes before the end of a webinar. Can't really control it, so you need to have a plan B, purposeful and planful.
Barbara from Holland is saying office time should not be back-to-back meetings. No. And so socializing, the water cooler time needs to be focused on as well.
Yeah, and that's a real challenge. You know, remember my finance director that I was telling you about earlier. It is a real challenge, particularly with people who find it a little bit awkward to be spontaneous. Those people who've got that introverted thinking, introverted feeling styles, to be able to be spontaneous and feel authentic in that connecting time. But it's critical, isn't it? Absolutely critical. So find a way, and you need to work through it. If you find that it's more difficult for you, work through it. And one more, Mark.
People like having fresh air in the middle of the day. Could that be okay during office days as well?
Yeah, a new vision and role model it. It is okay. Of course it's okay. And actually, you know, we had some pretty bad habits before. There's some pretty bad habits, office working. So let's make sure that we don't get those back. Okay, because what we are aiming for, I'm going to get my daffodils out again. We are aiming for a better hybrid than it was before. Remember what we said about the team at Cambridge Weight Plan, better, more people connected with, the doctor's surgery, better, more people helped, more patients seen. So make sure that whatever you do, you don't lose the good from this situation.
And Amanda, I've got one more perspective, which comes from Lise, Lord and Neil. Understand that one size does not fit all.
No.
And so you have to flex and you have to ask, what do you want and what do you think? And Neil's perspective is 20-somethings may feel completely different to 40.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And therefore, it's really critical. You know, one of the things that my finance director client was telling me, you could hear it going through his head. When I'm in a meeting, I've got to be in charge and I've got to have an agenda and I've got to know exactly how it's running. How long should I be connecting for, Amanda? And I need to have the solution. The best possible thing, we do know this, it does take more time, but we need to, the best thing is to collaborate and agree together. So to facilitate as a leader, way more than tell, more ask and less tell, so that you make sure that everybody, including the 20-somethings, are on board with the idea. One of the things that we've done with one of our client teams, it's a sales team, a commercial team, is launch an Instagram channel. A very young team, and we wanted to share stories of resilience, stories of how insight with customers, stories of how the company has protected and served and supported individuals, which is actually a private Instagram channel. You can see it wasn't me that actually did the tech. It was a private Instagram channel, and it was a channel that allowed them to share. So there are now about 60 videos, including some training reminders and a couple from us on the Instagram channel. So think about how can you use everything, all of the technology that's available, to make sure that you do keep connected with all the different people in your team. Okay, Mark, if that's, I think what we'll do is we'll wrap there. Thank you so much for those ideas. Thank you, and I can see that the ideas are still coming. I can just about see your name, Lisa, but I can't see what it says. So we will make sure that we share some of these out later on. Before we go, I'm going to pass over to Colin to finish off the session and remind you about a couple of things. But before we go, please remember that you are the fruit bowl and that your team are the fruit, and sometimes you're a fruit in there as well. You're a fruit you fancy being, and that just make sure that you're connecting with every member of your team, both individually and together, to make sure that they are supported, that they are challenged, but they are together in a common goal. And I've lost my post-it note, but on the back of here I had put, see if you can make it 5 a day. See if you can make it 5 a day connections with your team in one way or another, and see how you get on. And please do come back and tell us how you get on. Send us an email, tell us how you get on and what your successes are. So that's all from me in a slightly different location. I'm going to pass back to Colin, who's going to just tell you about some of the things that we're doing next.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Amanda. Could you all please give Amanda a virtual round of applause? You can come off mute if you like, and also our other guest contributors, who I thought also added some value today. So thank you, Amanda, for that. It's been quite excellent. Thank you. Interestingly, just recently we ran a think tank on diversity inclusion, and I was talking to a managing director of a recruitment business in the northwest of England. And one of the challenges that they're facing is how to actually adapt and improve the diversity challenge for their own organization. And one of the things that's become very relevant to them is that remote working is an absolutely fantastic tool to do that. So that if you think about lots of added value, they can let go of that office-centric culture and incorporate people who are in lots of different geographies. So many people are actually using this as a tool to help to adapt and develop the organization. One point of caution that I will pass on is, remember, with hybrid working, silence is not golden. It's actually alarming. Yeah. So just remember that thought when you're thinking about your teams and whether you're losing interaction with them. Your Uspire network really is a powerful way of increasing, hopefully, your awareness and effectiveness as a leader. We have a diverse range of industry peers who are all fellow members that you can bounce ideas off and actually think about solving problems through your organization. Latest research suggested that 55% of leaders already highly value peer-to-peer networking experiences, but 76% are reluctant to ask for help. Yeah. And only 60% actually even find the opportunity or what they consider to be an appropriate confidential environment to do it in. So following today, you can actually do 3 things next. Yeah. Firstly, learn something today, but forget the Uspire business concept. Yeah. The second thing, which I think it would be a great thing if you could do this, was read our powerful testimonials and book a 60-minute coaching session with one of the team and really experience the value that that can add. And finally, if you don't fancy that, book a 15-minute tell me more at least. And, you know, we'll tell you how Uspire delivers a 5-to-1 return for all of our business partners, and you can learn about future events that we have coming up. Our next event, just to put it all into context, yeah, is really what we're going to do is help leaders to spot the warning signs of highly stressful working conditions and how to develop coping strategies for you and your team. That's going to be our award-winning speaker. She's absolutely fantastic, a lady called Lindley Heath. For those of you who've heard her before, you'll know what value she adds, but she's willing to do our next event. So look out for it. It's on the 15th of April. And we do hope to see a number of you at that particular event. So finally, again, I'd like to thank Amanda and our guest contributors, and also Mark for being co-host. He never likes being out of the limelight, so actually being co-host as well has been an excellent thing for him. So thank you, Mark. It's been a pleasure as always having you as part of today. So thanks everybody. Enjoy and think about how your teams are working within this hybrid environment. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks,
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Goodbye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.
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 Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.
Zoom wave. Zoom wave.